Good morning. It is June 20th. We're here for our regular scheduled commissioners meeting. We have two commissioners in the House. We have one excused, Commissioner Mullen, the clerk of the board, and our administrator, Mr. Gonzalez. So at this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please rise and join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from May 30th, June 6th, and June 13th. Is there any additions, corrections, or revisions? All righty, next is the approval of vouchers. I believe we have one voucher.
Move for approval of fund expenditures, excuse me, in total amount of $745,834.03. Note that it's been reviewed by the auditor's office and the county administrator and signed off by all.
Second. Been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Takes us down to the consent agenda. I believe we have 4 items on the consent agenda.
Move for approval of consent agenda as presented, 4 items.
Second. With no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Takes us down to public comment. Is there anybody for public comment? Please come forward.
Thank you. I'm Dana Crutchfield, and I want to speak regarding concern I have about the recent assessments provided by the assessor office. I object to the aggressive inflated assessments. The assessor's department staff are not state licensed appraisers. Their scope of practice does not operate as such. But I really have a question about the formula used to arrive at these inflated numbers. I've heard the explanation that the sales from 2022 are used for the tax assessment of 2024. The market did stabilize some and soften in the latter portion of 2022, and land sale prices somewhat declined. So how many sales are used to arrive at these numbers? 1 or 2? I would think that that would hardly seem enough to make these adjustments or time adjustments, either forward or backward, being used to justify. In one of the recent meetings, the assessor stated if the interest rates go down, things will take off like a rocket. I do not believe he is an economist and should be making these guesses. He did repeatedly invite the public to call his office, that his staff was ready, willing, wanting to answer all questions, that he had, quote unquote, a full staff in and around the clock, pulling them in and off the field for the week or two. We have vast amounts of data to show the change of value. Specifically, I called the assessor's office last week 3 times. The phone rang and rang, no answer, no voice message capability in order to leave a message. And another acquaintance of mine requested last Wednesday the residential land sales analysis for 2022 used to develop these values. He still hasn't heard or received them. He was told by staff that the office manager, the assistant appraiser, was at a meeting or conference and that they couldn't release anything until she returned because she is the one who sets these values. So I just question that why, when there is an issue so publicly contested, would the staff be unavailable, away at conferences when promised otherwise, especially when the matter is time sensitive? The appeal is due by July 3rd, I believe. So it seems like to me that it's either very poor foresight or perhaps deliberate just avoidance. Neither one is suitable, I believe, or acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment?
Good morning, Gary Crutchfield. I wanted to address quickly some analysis that some friends of ours and we got involved with to take a look at just what could justify these kinds of extraordinary increases. For example, a lot of the riverfront lots are going up 90% in 1 year. We took a look at the overall assessment increases. We looked at the assessor's website data at every single lot sale of like size and similar characteristics west of 395, so that we're looking at like properties. And I have a chart which I can leave with. So the commission can see this. There were about 16 like sales in that time period of 2022. You can see very quickly the average or a median was somewhere between 120 and 130,000 each, actual sales. Yet the assessments for the assessed value for 2023 all are 140, 150, 160. So there's about a 25% increase in assessment value over and above actual sales history. That leads one to be puzzled how they could come up with those kinds of numbers. Back on the riverfront lots, a similar chart was provided. Actually, this is provided by the staff when my wife called. So we thought, well, gee, that'll explain it. It shows two sales in 2022, one in January and one in October. Extreme difference in property because one has a dock, one does not. The other properties have been added. There's a sale from 2018 and one from 2019. That's a long ways from 2022, so they use some kind of arbitrary inflation factor, which isn't explained. They just say it's 2.39%. Where did that come from? You ask them and they say they don't have the information. I think the commission should at least represent the public interest here and ask the assessor's office to do a better job of providing the information that the taxpayer needs to determine should they appeal, and what they should appeal on. You can't do it if there's a black hole to get the information. Assigning arbitrary inflation numbers is creates a lot of doubt in the value and the accuracy of what's going on, and there's significant increases. And we ask for some sort of assistance in helping us get the information we need so we can make a timely appeal.
Thank you. Nobody on the phone?
No, sir, nobody on the phone.
Anybody else for public comment?
George Dockstetter. I brought up last week, prices have dropped an average of 5% over a year ago per month since the first of the year. And there's no way these values have gone up to what they're assessed at. I've been looking at different ones. People have been calling off the hook, asking for me what to do. And basically, I've been told if you want to appeal, you better go hire an appraiser to come up with an actual price, because if you just go in there and talk yourself, you're going to get shot down because you don't know what you're talking about. And why should somebody have to pay $600, $650 to get an appraiser to tell them what their damn house is worth to appeal what's an outrageous assessment that's been coming across? I feel that all the assessments should be rolled back to last year's until they get their heads out of their you-know-whats down there in the assessor's department and come up with true values of what the property's worth. I know the assessor said, well, I'll buy your property if you think it's not worth that. Well, my daughter's ready to sign the deed if he's ready to write the check. Because it's 40,000 over the highest sale in her area. And this is ridiculous. And the other thing I asked for, I want to know if there's favoritism. I'd like to see the assessor show us, the public, all the department heads and elected officials, what their assessed value went up and what the three people on each side went up, to see if we are being screwed over by a bunch of favoritism going on here in the county office. And I'm not talking land values, I'm talking improvement values, because most people just own a house. And we'd sure like to see it and find out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
Hi, Chris Hollingsworth. Spoke last week. We talked about lots of things, actually. One thing I want to bring up today, and I briefly mentioned it last week, was USPAP, the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. Standards 5 and 6 are what mass appraisal governs mass appraisal. 5 is developing, 6 is reporting. And each standard, they have the breakdown of things to do, what you must not do. In
Chris, can I ask you to come closer to the mic so everybody can hear you? Thank you.
Yeah, in Standard 5.1b, it states, in developing a mass appraisal, an appraiser must not commit a substantial error of omission or commission that significantly affects mass appraisal. I had a homeowner in North Pasco. We've been in touch quite a bit. I'm trying to help him walk through the process. And he did come down to the assessor's office. He actually got his land table, or his array of sales that the assessor used. And he has a 5-acre property, which I mentioned last week. And I'm looking at this array of sales, and there's two just glaring properties. One sold for $2.5 million and one sold for $1.2 million. The rest are $400,000, $600,000, $500,000. Pretty normal, but two glaring, so I look them up. The one that sold for $2.5 million is 167 acres. It's actually noted as commercial agriculture utility by the assessor. Why they would use an agricultural property to compare it to a residential property, I don't know. And then the other one is 20 acres, sold for 1.5. In the MLS, it states it's an income-producing property. It's sold to Mirror Ministries, which is, a nonprofit. But it specifically states that they're making $25,000 to $27,000 a year on their alfalfa. Again, income-producing property should not be used. When you look at this array, you can just see, okay, well, why do we have these in here? And those should be taken out. This is clearly an error of commission. These should not have been included in this array. And so because it skews the whole entire process. In my neighborhood, I looked up my sales. My neighbor down the road, he sold his house, completely renovated, new interior all the way through. It's rated as a fair plus condition. It's the highest sale in the neighborhood based on those sales. So if the fair plus is rated here and it's sold for the most, everything that's rated above it is going to get pulled up and falsely inflating everybody's value. Again, error of commission. They don't know the difference. My concern is where is the line between error of commission and fraud? I don't know, but it feels like we're getting somewhere close to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
Yeah, my name's Kurt Didier. All these people prior to me pretty much stated a lot of what I'm going to state. But once again, I have a piece of property out close to me that's not agricultural. It's a house, total of 6 acres, purchased in late October, almost 1st November, for $677,000. His new assessment is $1.1 million, over $400,000. Now, evidently, the assessor's office is using algorithmic type of program and plugging in numbers and it's spitting stuff out. I've listened to meetings, other meetings, they go around once and physically look at properties every 6 years because they got 6 sections, correct? Okay. I've listened to your stuff the last couple meetings. There's a lot of misinformation and stuff put out there saying, well, when people come in and talk to us, they leave very pleased. I don't think anybody leaves your office, John, pleased about nothing, to be honest with you. I mean, when you look at this one piece of property, this guy's taxes went up $4,000 in 1 year. When you're purchasing a piece of property and you're on a payment, that raises your payment $4,000 a year, which is roughly what, $50, $60 a month? I don't think.
Can you just keep the mic so we can hear
Okay,
what you're
I
saying?
don't think anybody would be happy about it. I don't care how you explain it. And I don't really believe that a person that buys the property or has a problem with these taxes should have to prove why you are wrong. You should have to prove why you guys are right in your assessment, because this is nothing but a program spitting out numbers. You put something in and it's spitting it out. And it's like these people have stated, it is very, very misconstrued and stuff, because you can, just like they've all said in their areas, you can go look at the sales, and just like this one, there is no sale for $1.1 million out in that area. I can guarantee that. I live out there and they know pretty much all the sales. So I don't know how you could come up with that assessment when there's no sale out there even for that amount. I mean, it's like you're just putting in a program and spitting it out, and it don't even come close to what's actually happening in reality in the time frame that we're talking about. So I think that we really better look at what kind of program we're using, where we got it, because evidently it needs to be reworked.
Thank you. Is there anybody on the phone, Mike?
No, sir.
Anybody else for public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move down to regular business. And the first one is the public hearing that is continued. It's still open by Mr. Bratton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we are continuing, or we are requesting that we continue this hearing to the 27th.
Okay.
We did receive the final determination, or the determination that we were waiting for from Ecology on Friday
So
afternoon.
Derek, before you get too far, would you refresh the public's
I'm
on what
sorry.
we're talking
Yeah.
about?
Shoreline Master Program, or SMP. This is the regulations that are utilized for basically any activity within 200 feet of the shoreline
Okay.
or along the shoreline. It's really primarily what we did, not a lot of changes that are going to affect any landowners beyond what's already been in the books. It was primarily a job to ensure that our Shoreline Master Program is up to date with the current regulations at the state level. And it is a required review every 10 years.
So it is a public hearing. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on this topic? Seeing none, we're going to keep this open until the 27th, correct?
Correct, yeah, we'll have I just want to make sure we've done a preliminary review. We're not expecting any changes to the SMP. Ecology did not require any, but because we got it so late on Friday, I want to make sure that everything's laid up, so.
So if anybody in the room or anybody at home that is listening, if you would like to weigh in on this, where would they send their comments to, Derek?
They can, if they're sending it via email, it would be planning inquiry, all one word, at franklincountywa.gov.
All righty, thank you. So
Derek,
this-
before you run off.
Yep.
This other commissioner has a couple of questions.
I'm sorry.
So you dropped off a document on our desk here as
That-
the meeting was starting.
Yeah, that's a copy of it. I just wanted y'all to have that.
So this is an initial feedback from Ecology?
Correct.
Are there any showstoppers in this initial document?
Nope.
Okay.
They didn't recommend any changes.
Okay, and you're continuing to next week for what purpose? I didn't catch that.
Just to make sure that all my documentation's right, because everything's been kind of flipping around back and forth. You could take action on the ordinance as presented, but I have to double check with legal regarding the signature on the as to form.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that will remain open. Next, we'll move down to the public hearing on Transportation Plan with Bridge Report. Mr. Erdman, at this time, I'll open this public hearing. So please go ahead, Mr. Erdman.
Thank you. The purpose of this hearing is to review the proposed Franklin County six-year transportation program for the years 2024 through 2029, and to hear testimony in favor of or against the adoption of the program. RCW 36.81.121 requires counties to prepare and annually update their six-year transportation improvement program pursuant to one or more public hearings, and to file a copy of the adopted program with the Washington State Department of Transportation and the County Road Administration Board. The Transportation Improvement Program represents the county's priority transportation improvements, and all projects listed within the program, regardless of ranking, are eligible for state and federal funding. The Transportation Improvement Program may be changed after its adoption to add new projects, delete projects, and change projects to accommodate cost, schedule, scope, and funding changes. The first 4 years of the program are fiscally constrained, meaning that the projects have funding or funds are reasonably available. The investment level is based upon the anticipated amount of funding available from various sources. This does not guarantee projects will be funded. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you, Mr. Erdman. Questions, commissioners?
Greg, no questions. As you know, I sit on the State County Road Administration Board, so we work hand in glove with all 39 counties on these. I'm pretty well acquainted, and I think your comments were terrific, and I appreciate them being concise because this is a deep subject. There is one thing that I didn't hear you say that I think would be productive for people to know, and that is, even though this is a six-year plan, it is just a plan. In fact, you put it in your read-ahead material that this can be changed by the Board of Commissioners if a higher priority comes along, if additional funding comes, if we need to reorder things. So sometimes people hear it's a six-year plan, they think we're locking in what we're going to do for roads for 6 years. Nothing like that. You and I know that because we do this a lot, but I wanted everyone else to be aware that this can change as needs change.
There is a similar process to this to make changes to the STIP, and we use it often.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
And I'd just like to say the review of it, I'm glad to see that you have moved up the intersection there on
Yes.
Taylor Flats to number 10. I appreciate that because those trucks, when they try and make that more than 90-degree corner, they get jackknifed and it does slow up traffic and we can create an accident.
It's a difficult intersection, and now that we're kind of split in ownership, we'll be reaching out to the city and probably looking for sort of a combined project there.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
That was actually going to be my next question is, are you in coordination with the city because of where the boundary has recently moved, partially overlapping that intersection?
We've loosely discussed it.
Okay.
So, but
Well,
they're aware of it, and we're aware of it, and they know the problem, and we know the problem, so.
Specifically, I would ask you to get with the city and do some reasonable level of analysis on what changes to that intersection will do for safety, which is our first priority, but also what the collateral effects might be. Is this going to move an additional 20, 30% of truck traffic over to Road 100? And if it is, if that's anticipated, then we need to be working side by side with the city to make sure that their planning and our actions are cohesive and aren't working against each other.
Yep.
All right,
That's
thank
the
you.
plan.
All right, appreciate it.
All righty. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that would like to weigh in on the transportation plan? Anybody on the phone, Mike?
No, sir.
All right. Well, if there's nobody wanting to weigh in on that, then I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move for approval of Resolution 2023-179, the matter of transportation plans and bridge report as presented by Mr. Erdman today.
I second. There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-179. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that moves us down to the amending speed limit ordinance, public hearing. So at this time, Mr. Erdman, I will open the public hearing on amending speed limit ordinances.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. This is regarding ordinance 10-2021, which was passed on June 29th of 2021. This is an amendment which is just accounting for roads that we've lost in annexation and gained through the plating process. There are no major changes to speed limits to existing roads in this update. This is just simply stuff that's come on and dropped off.
All right, is there any questions for the speed limit ordinance?
Just an observation, again, for the public's benefit, when you say some of these things have dropped off, almost exclusively that's cases where the city has annexed part of the county and it's no longer in our purview to set speed limits in the city. I just wanted people to know why things are dropping off.
Okay. Sorry if I did
Nope.
mention annexation. But yes, that's the primary reason. Occasionally, we do vacate a road or
Right, I went through the list. It looks like pretty much all of them are annexations.
they were
but
all annexations and
we have some areas in our donut holes, for example, that have been speed issues. And I know that half a dozen particular residents who are very conscientious are watching them. And that's really who I'm speaking to as well.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All righty, so this is a public hearing. Is there anybody on the phone or in the audience that would like to weigh in on the speed ordinances? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move for approval of ordinance 05-2023 in the matter of amending speed limit ordinance as presented by Mr. Erdman today.
Second, there's been a motion and a second for resolution, or ordinance, ordinance 05-2023. Better get my glasses on, make sure I read that right. Yeah, 05-2023. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moves us down to Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's been quite busy. We got the HAPO Center RFP out on Friday, so that is now on our website. Also working to put it in the Franklin County Graphic, Tri-City Herald, Visit Tri-Cities, social media platforms, and the Journal of Business. Been talking with the prosecuting attorney's office. The PA office and OPD crisis continues. Employees continue to leave that office. The PA office lost 3 employees last week, 1 to private practice, 1 to Benton County. 1 will be actually moving into our OPD office. So I'll be talking with Sean on recruiting strategies, how we get some more money into that office and, pay grades in the future. So really just the system in general, I feel like is imploding. Myself and Larry, we met with some legislators from the west side, the governor's office, Wasac, individuals from Yakima and Snohomish County. I think the striking thing that came out of that meeting when I asked a policy advisor from the governor's office if the bill that Senator Torres is crafting needs to be a bipartisan issue. What was really striking is she said the first thing that Democratic lawmakers are going to ask us is, have we asked our taxpayers to fix the OPD crisis and what's happening in our PA's office? We simply don't have the money to fund it. We can't find lawyers. Young lawyers don't want to do this type of work because it doesn't pay enough. So this is something we may have to ask our voters for. They may have to reject it in order to move things forward. Wasac plans to bring a lawsuit forward sometime this month or next. So they're certainly fighting on our behalf, but just the crisis continues. So I'll keep you updated on that front.
Before we move on there, Mr. Gonzalez, what is the timeline for getting this on the ballot?
We have to get it sometime in August.
I think this is a clear indicator that we put it on the ballot and we let our voters reject it. And then we go to Olympia and say, okay, they're not willing to pay for this.
Right.
Now what are you going to do? You created this mess. Now how are you going to fix it?
I certainly think the caveat that the governor's office is telling us is if you don't take a measure to try to solve it yourselves, more than likely the legislature is not going to solve it for us. At least that is the caveat. So we certainly need to take some action first. And based on what we've heard here, the assessments and everything, I would think the likelihood is that our voters wouldn't pass it, but you never know. So that's up to the commissioners to decide if that would move forward. But ultimately, it would be up to the voters to decide if they want to fix that problem. I'll certainly get the information out there, and if anybody wants to talk to me, my door is always open about what's been going on.
Okay.
But it's definitely we're at crisis mode. Other things that I've been working on, finishing up the Consor contract. We've approved the final scope. The thing I want to let staff know and our employees, I've talked to Consor. This is the study that is taking the place of the Gallagher study. So they are going to fast track the salary part of it. So what I'm hoping, best case scenario, as we head into October, into the budget season, that we'll have a clear indication on some comparators like Benton County, Yakima County, Chelan County, Walla Walla County. So we have a clear indication where we stack up in terms of salary comparisons. Does that guarantee we'll give people raises? Probably not, because you need money to give raises, but at least we'll certainly have a comparator. Meeting with the Hub Benefit Group, so they're our brokers. Meeting with Margot, our HR interim director today. Just trying to really get ahead of the game, because it was clear to me last year it felt a little rushed how that basically folded out. So really trying to get ahead of the game and hopefully get our employees some little bit better insurance this year. On a lighter note, met with other county administrators and city managers. So this was first opportunity to get together with this group with Jared McPherson, Marie Mosley, Adam Lincoln, John Edmondson from Richland. So it's kind of a nice informal group. We get together, talk policy initiatives, how to deal with different things. So nice to be with that group of leaders who give advice, and so that was fun. Also interviewed for our office assistant position that's been open, so excited. We think we've found a great candidate, so she'll start July 10th. So I'm excited about that. And the other thing, took part in the selection process for the Three Rivers Behavioral Health Recovery Center with the group, so they're going to build a center, so we're a part of that.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. And I just encourage everybody, if you want to know what's going on in Franklin County, just tune into Mr. Gonzalez's Facebook page. He's got a great page telling everything that he's doing and what's going on in the county. This is the most transparent we've ever been in information going out there as far as what's happening in our county and how you can help us get some of this done. So
Thanks.
Good job, and your newsletter is excellent.
Thank you.
Commissioner Peck.
So the State Association of Counties, through its Legislative Steering Committee, has worked numerous issues over the years with the governor's office, and the answer that we're hearing today is no different than the one we've heard for decades, which is if you have tax authority locally, gosh, we really think you ought to use that first. In cases where we have used that authority first, on the backside of that experience, the answer has been, well, gosh, you've used your tax authority, you don't need us anymore, when in fact we still do. Most recent example of that was with the Mental Health 1/10, which I was happy to support, but my experience now after 15 years and several of those years working directly with the legislature and the governor's office on funding, the answer is tax your people, tax your people, tax your people, and I certainly will not be supporting the county going out and asking for another tax on Franklin County residents for this. This is absolutely, without question, a state constitutional mandate. These OPD expenses belong to the state, not to the taxpayers of Franklin County. And the last thing I think we want to do is step back from that line and acquiesce and pretend like somehow this is our responsibility. It's not. It belongs to the state. And yes, WASAC did create a litigation committee that I've been part of since it started just several years ago now. And we've run one test case on unfunded mandates. We use the requirement for counties to do additional ballot boxes because it was fairly clean and fairly simple. And we found out State Supreme Court had a different interpretation on it. So we've learned from that lesson. The court ruled that no, the ballot boxes really are a county responsibility, not state. But that gave us a little bit of a measure against how the State Supreme Court is going to rule on these mandates from the state. And we're fairly confident that on the OPD, that this is in fact, as I've already said, clearly a state obligation. So I don't support creating a precedent where we go and ask our citizens to pay more taxes every time the governor says no. Wanted to mention, you made a reference to the prosecutor's office, and you said they've lost 3 employees this week. It's worth noting that all 3 of them were attorneys, which, as we've been discussing, are very difficult to find and engage. especially at the wages we're able to pay. And I think that puts that office at about 50% staffing on attorneys. Don't hold me to the 50%, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. With respect to meetings this week, went to the Benton Franklin Counties Recovery Coalition event, which was held last Tuesday at a home in Richland. Got a good update on the Recovery Coalition process going forward. A couple hours opportunity to speak with numerous legislators who helped us get money from the state for that program. Benton Franklin Council of Governments this meeting, chaired that as usual. Fairly routine business this week, nothing of particular note to report. The Credit Board, which is a subset of the Council of Governments, the Columbia Regional Economic Development Investment Trust, is a loan fund. It's federally funded, and we do loans for small businesses. Just want to report that we were able to ratify a settlement on a bad debt, a loan that was not repaid and had been languishing for a few years. And Michelle Holt, who's our executive director, is especially diligent and deserves a lot of credit for tracking this down and recovering taxpayers' money on that loan. A lot of discussion about assessments. I've heard, like my fellow commissioners, a number of concerns, including the ones in the meeting. After Mr. Dockstetter's comments a couple of weeks ago, I went home and I looked at my own assessment and started filling out an appeal to the county. My concern is twofold. One, they quite clearly overassessed my land and underassessed my house. And I think other people may be finding the same thing. And I don't know if there's a lesson in that, and the lesson may be that the model is kicking out one value for both, and then the program is flawed in splitting the two. I have no idea, really. I'm trying to figure out how it could be that my next-door neighbor, who has a virtually identical lot to mine, saw his land-only value, not improvements, land-only, went from approximately 450 or 500,000 up to over 900,000 in 1 year, just for the lot. In my case, the value on my house went down and the value on my lot went up. Well, I'm quite sure the value on both went up. I think the land went up too much and the house actually went down, which still baffles me. I mean, it's a 1970s house, but it's 5,000 square feet too, and it's not in great shape, but it's not horrible. I mean, it was underassessed. So maybe for the first time ever, you'll be getting a complaint to the Board of Equalization that you didn't tax me enough on my house, but you'll be getting another one that says you overtaxed me on the land. So we'll work that out, I'm sure. And lastly, I'd like to suggest, since there's only about 2 weeks left before the July 3rd cutoff for the filings to the Board of Equalization, that the auditor, or excuse me, the assessor, who I'll acknowledge is an independent elected and doesn't take direction from me or this board, but I'd like to offer the suggestion that maybe within the coming week, there's some sort of an evening public forum where the public can come and attend, and you can explain how this model works and give some assurance of how we're going to resolve a lot of these, I think, clearly, well, I'll just say questioned assessments. I don't want to get into judging your work because that's not my expertise. I think that's it. Thanks.
So my week was a pretty light week. I had the Port of Pasco, which I could not attend because I attended a meeting with Dr. Olson, the water guru for the state here in our living locally here in our community, about water issues and what's transpiring up at Colotis. Board of Health meeting, and then lots of calls and questions about property assessments. And this has really created quite a controversy in our county, and I think that our Board of Equalization is going to be overwhelmed. And I too, as a landowner, am going to be questioning my values that have increased dramatically. And again, as a farmer, we're susceptible to Mother Nature and the markets. And when our property values are showing the values of some of this land that's being bought by organizations such as the Teachers Union and the pension plans, which I think should be thrown out and not even used in the analysis because they're not looking for any return. As a farmer of the land, you got to have a return. You got to be able to make money so that you can stay in business. And the values, I believe, are not in check with the farmers, and that's why I've thrown that out numerous times about looking what California has done, but it takes the legislature to be willing to do this. Proposition 13, along with the Williamson Act, you pay taxes on what you pay for the land. And that way everything comes to that same equal of a valuation of 14,000, because if you got people coming in here paying 30,000 an acre, they're going to pay taxes on 30,000 an acre. And we pay taxes on what we paid for it, because I've passed up on ground for 8,000 and 9,000 because I can't make that pencil, but yet my land's being assessed at 14. It's a matter of what you can create in revenue. And right now, this hay market is upside down. Where feeder hay in California is $100. Feeder hay here is 140. Top quality alfalfa is 200. It was 350 last year. Things are going backwards for us. So it's not looking good out there. And with these assessments, that's why you're having so many people upset, is because we're trying to figure out how we came at these figures. So I think it's something that we really need to look at, much like our elections, where we do a fact check, and Mr. Beaton does batch checks to make sure that the elections are all being monitored and the ballots are being recorded as sent in. And I think we need to do an assessment check, have some private sector, we've had them here at the mic, and they've offered up their services free of charge, and have them doing a valuation of a piece of property, and then see if it comes up to what our program is kicking out. I think there's nothing wrong with that. Let these appraisers go out and appraise this property and see if it's coming up right. Just to double check, just to make sure all our constituents are happy with the way it's going. And that's the end of my report, and we'll move down to elected and department head business. So if there's any elected or department heads that'd like to come forward, please do.
We can stand together. We're gonna stand together. Me, you.
That's the American way.
Recently, there was a motion made regarding the VEBA to cash, to remove those payments. Discussing that with Margot, I think the most appropriate thing to do would be to create a resolution to, if the board wishes to change the way those are done. So the language from that, in the original resolution is, just one blurb from that. It says, "And be it further resolved, effective January 1st, 2017, excess benefits contributions not applied for payment of premiums and sick leave cash outs for elected officials shall be taken as cash in lieu of insurance, grossed down for employer payroll taxes, or if selected by the elected official, deposited to the elected official's deferred compensation account." So currently, actually, the commissioners do have a choice to take it as deferred compensation anyway. But I think even more so if the resolution is passed after the election, to where essentially they're approving pay for themselves, then what probably should happen is adding a statement, something like, if a Franklin County Commissioner is ineligible to take the excess benefit contributions as cash due to the timing of the approval of the resolutions and to be in compliance with state laws regarding elected officials' pay increases, then they will be enrolled in deferred compensation. So it wouldn't give the option as leave to cash. And so that would be a separate statement, be it further resolved, just for the commissioners, since they approve their pay.
Margot, you got anything to add?
Well, I mean, he pretty much summarized it, but just to get clarification on that motion and what we need to do to move forward with that.
Okay.
Ultimately, the original was created by resolution, and so this change, as desired by the board, should also be by resolution.
Okay. All righty. Is there any questions?
Have you coordinated this plan with our legal counsel?
No, that's the next step that we would have to do. We wanted to ask for clarification. We did have a conversation about making an amendment to the resolution. It will need to go through legal.
Yeah, it will need to go through legal. I agree with you on that point. You don't have clarification today because you have two commissioners and one of them does not agree with your proposal. So I recommend you go through legal, get the proper coordination, then come back. What you're actually proposing is not an administrative change to allow you to execute what the board talked about. What you're proposing is a policy change. And while you're certainly welcome to recommend policy changes, I just want to be clear, this is a policy change, not an administrative change. But you did intentionally or inadvertently, I'm not sure which, touch on the very issue that generated this situation back in 2016. And that is that you have to do the benefits adjustments during the open period for enrollment, which comes after the election day in November, but before the start of the new term the following year. And that's part of the reason that some of us still hold very firmly that these are benefits, not salary. And the language in the words, whether you say salary or wages or total compensation, each of those appears to have different meaning in law. And whether you're looking at the federal IRS statutes for what's taxable, whether you're looking at the state PERS rules, whether you're looking at the state RCWs or the Attorney General's opinions, the language that's used is really critical. Because this motion was already made and seconded, I've been waiting to see if the auditor's office would be adjusting anyone's compensation or pay or salary, use whatever term you want for that one, and how we were going to handle the notion that you can't make an offer of insurance at this point in the calendar, as HR well knows, because we're outside that open period. So for those and probably a dozen other reasons I could explain, it's pretty crucial that you have a thorough legal review of whatever it is that's being proposed. And I understand, I heard you when you said instead of a taxable cash fringe benefit for those of us who have already prepaid our insurance, and for those who don't need insurance, and for those who don't want to put it in VEBA and watch the federal government draw on it as a first payer. For all those reasons, the idea of compelling people to put it into a deferred compensation brings us right back to whether or not it's compensation and that whole discussion about terms. The underlying issue is really whether or not it's salary. And if it's determined by this proposal that it is, then I'm going to want to know on day one why this county failed to make payments into the retirement system for those employees who took it as what the county now deems to be salary, because there's a legal obligation to do that, and they haven't been doing it for years. There's just so much more that could be said on this subject, but I think for now I'll just say please get a thorough legal review of whatever it is you're intending to bring forward so that we don't have a protracted debate about what's legal and what's not when the proposal actually comes forward. And I guess I just want to close by saying, if it sounds like I'm in some way angry or frustrated with you two, I'm not. You didn't create this problem, and you're trying to fix it, and I appreciate that. I really do. But words matter, the law matters, and I would beg you to get thorough legal review before bringing anything forward. Thanks.
And I'd like to say something too. Back when this was passed, my fellow commissioner put a post out on Facebook saying that he was taking this as salary and a wage. And now he's saying it's a benefit. It was out there, now it's been taken down. The benefit and wage or benefits is something that we all have gotten through time. When you're getting a benefit from the taxpayers in a insurance plan, from the military, and then you're taking a benefit from the taxpayers of Franklin County as salary, I call that double dipping, and it's wrong. It's about ethics. And we're looking for attorney review. Where is our attorney? He's been out of the office for the last 2 weeks. We're looking for some forms to be reviewed so that we can get them on the docket to pass. We're spending $2 million a year in the conversion of benefits to salary in Franklin County. How much better could we pay our constituents here working in this county, in this courthouse, if we had that $2 million? And how many more people could we retain in this courthouse? These are questions that need to be answered. I, for one, have already told, and I will, write a check back for the monies that was deposited in my account because I got all caught up in this. I take the insurance, but the insurance didn't go up with the benefits package that we passed earlier. So it went into my salary, and I refused to take it. So I will be writing a check back to the county. I don't care what the attorney says. I'm not going to get into this game of taking money that was a benefit for insurance in salary. So I'll be writing a check back to the county. Thank you.
So on that, it's necessary for me to add a note. The $2 million reference and how we might better spend that for employee salaries, I think it'd be good for folks to understand that whether a person takes it as insurance or VEBA or deferred compensation or a federally taxable fringe benefit, the dollar amount's the same. It doesn't reduce the cost to the taxpayer by simply saying take it as insurance. The dollar amount's the same. Benefits are human benefits. You get the same dollar amount, excuse me, and the same benefit as being an employee of Franklin County. It doesn't matter whether you are working in a minimum wage job or you're the most highly compensated person in the county. You still get the same. That's part of the reason that it's called benefits and not salary, because it's an allotment, a dollar amount to each employee to use in a way that best serves their individual needs. Some of us who work for substandard wages and sometimes in not the best of conditions for decades in the military earned and prepaid our medical benefits. I'm offended that anyone would suggest that that's double dipping any more than having a couple where one takes benefits from PNNL and the other takes benefits here for the same family. It's offensive. Again, there's so much that could be said on this. I think it's probably in the public's best interest. I just let it be. But I'll close by saying that references to 7 years ago when a term, whether it's wages or salaries or however it is a curious argument to rest on. What you use in terms of your speech and your language matters, but what matters more is what the law actually defines as salary and as wages and as benefits. Every elected official in the courthouse is under the plan to take it as a taxable fringe benefit, not just the commissioners. And for that to happen, all the members of that group had to vote to make it so. Now, some of them take the insurance and said, doesn't really affect me, I don't care. But those who voted and who cared, the majority chose to go this way. So it wasn't just the commissioners, it was the other electeds as well. So that's enough for today. Appreciate all your good work. Thanks.
Commissioners are the ones that voted this through. The other electeds didn't have a vote. It was the three commissioners at that time, you, Commissioner Cook, and Commissioner Miller, voted to take this as salary.
Actually, we voted at the behest of the electeds who met in this room and discussed it in detail and voted and asked the commissioners to take that vote, just to be clear. Thanks much. I'm done.
Do you guys have anything you want to add?
No, I think we're good.
So we passed that. We need clarity on it. So we'll have to wait for a full Board of Commissions because nothing's going to get done today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Is there any other department heads or electeds that would like to come forward?
So commissioners, just want to clarify a few things and at least address things for the public. The sole purpose of the assessor's office is to make sure that the value that is set for assessment on the properties is equitable and fair across the board of this county. And I can assure you that that is exactly the goal of our office. Some people will disagree with the methodology. Some people disagree with the dollar amount that's shown up. I've been over the numbers with you. I showed you that the state audits a year ago were at less than 85% when we're required to be up around 100%. We've ran all the quality assurance numbers. We've looked at things inside out, upside down, backwards, and we may be close to the 100% in our audit this year. But we're certainly not going to be way over. We're not going to be way under. There's been just a lot of things said, so I want to clarify a couple things. Number one is I was out of the office last week. I was at our state conference with the rest of the assessors of this state, meeting with legislators, voting on directions that we can attempt to get the legislators for changing of state laws. One of those that I supported, voted for wholeheartedly, would be a Homestead Act for this state. Granted, the legislators have to take it up. They have to make it a bill. The vast majority of citizens of this county would get tremendous tax relief if that passes and can get through the legislature. And I was a strong proponent for pushing that through. Met with several legislators over there, met with the Department of Revenue. In fact, later today, I actually have a meeting with the director and assistant director of property taxation for the Department of Revenue, because we're following the guidelines that my office is required to follow under statute. Now, if I could change at a whim, I would do it. But we don't control the taxes. We only control the assessment value, and then you, as county commissioners and the other legislative authorities, the other taxing district boards, determine what their budgets are going to be, and that gets divided out based on assessment value. So just because your assessment value goes up does not automatically mean that your taxes are going up. It was suggested that we were out of the office. Two of us were at that meeting, critical meeting in representing this county and the taxpayers of this county for future, hopefully, reductions in taxes if we're properly assessing, and I believe we are. We've looked at this thing in every direction you can imagine, and I know some people will disagree with that, but it shows up. We were not ignoring calls, so let me address that. Yesterday, the phone was ringing off the hook because the county apparently did not notify our phone system that we were closed yesterday throughout the entire courthouse. So apparently there were a lot of calls that were coming in and nobody was able to answer. In the last 3 weeks, my office has been answering, and I would venture to say there hasn't been a half a dozen calls that got missed in my office, that came to my office. And I know the reports that your gentlemen are getting and the public is stating. But if you look at your change of value notice that goes out, the phone number on there is for the appeal number, and that is ringing down in the commissioner's area. And there's only one person there that could even answer that during the week, and if she's busy or gone, there's nobody answering that call. That's not our office. We want the people to call. In all honesty, I don't believe that we are getting near the calls that some of the counties are getting this year with what they're seeing. So I urge people to call us. Mr. Dockstetter mentioned that he didn't want to pay for an appraisal fee, and nor should you, George, and it certainly is not recommended by my office that any taxpayer goes out and pays for a fee appraisal. They're not necessary. If they want to get comps, not just sales in their area, but if they want to get comps, they can contact our office, and we'll work with them to do that. They may need to file the appeal between now and July 3rd. Doesn't mean we don't work with them after that before the hearing. We certainly will. But they may need to file that because there's only so many hours in a day, and I only have such a staff. Now, if you wanted fee appraisal work done in this county by our office, you'd have to hire about 45 appraisers. It's not possible. That's why the state doesn't do it. It's a mass appraisal. So we're also dealing and handling lots of calls for seniors, people at the counter. I don't think we've had more than 8 people in line at one time in our office, and yet the word was out there that we were up the stairs, out the door, and clear over to the security building. And that hasn't been the case. We're taking every call we can, answering every phone call, taking everybody that comes in person as fast as best we can. So I'm going to ask Nikki to come up if she would, just to clarify what our appraisers are doing, how we're handling this process. I could give you stat after stat, but
John, before
Yes.
you leave, give the phone.
Well, I'm not leaving. I'm standing here.
before, give the phone number a couple times of what people can call if they miss it.
509-545-3506.
There you go.
509-545-3506. If you're calling the number on the back of the change of value notice, that's the appeal office.
Yeah.
Board of Equalization, which is a valid board. I mean, if you didn't appoint a board, you 3 gentlemen would have to be sitting on it. That's the way the statute is. So anyway, Nikki, go ahead.
Okay. So I believe the question was, what are our appraisers doing to get back to people on their questions? And John already touched on a little bit, but with 39,000 parcels and 6 appraisers, we're not going to be able to provide you a fee appraisal. That's not the intent of this. It's set up in state statute that we do this once a year and you have 30 days. So 39,000 parcels, 6 appraisers, 30 days. The state legislature set it up so that the intention is for you to fill out the appeal form. There is no way that 6 appraisers can get back to as many people as are going to have questions in 30 days. It's the way that the process is set up. So are we getting back to people? Are we providing the model? Are we providing the array of sales that took place in an area? Absolutely. Are we going to have time with 6 appraisers to do a fee appraisal? No, that's not the intent of this period right here. So what happens is, if you're not satisfied and you have additional questions, the appraisers are following up with people. So if you want to know where the time adjustment came from, I suggest you call our office and ask an appraiser, asking your commissioners, asking your neighbors where our time adjustment came from isn't going to lead to answers. So if you ask the appraisers in the office, we'll do our best to get back to you with the resources that we have. So given that we are answering phones and we are helping people at the counter and we are facing the same deadlines that you are, the process is to fill out your appeal form. And so we're getting you the basic information. And then after the 30 days, after July 3rd, of course, everything for our office slows down. That's when the appraisers have the time and the resources to do a more in-depth look on the property. Are there specific comps that support this specific value? Do I need to come out and do a physical inspection of the property? Does a correction need to be made? That's when we have more of that time to answer those questions.
Okay.
So, and keep in mind, we're also right in the middle of new construction and dealing with all of that, and we only have till the end of July to be in the field and getting that done. And those dates and timelines are established by the state legislature and the Department of Revenue. They're outside of our control. We have to follow those guidelines. So we encourage people, call. If we can't get you as much detail as you want, file the appeal. That is your right to do. You can, if a judge makes a ruling and you don't like it, you can appeal it. So we encourage people to exercise their rights as a citizen. And certainly, we hope that we'll be able to have more time to get back to more of them on that. So definitely a big difference. And Commissioner Didier, there's a big difference between market value on your farm and assessed value. So market values are going up. Those are sales, what they're selling for. It's not
2 million
assessment.
up on the market, a million up on the open spaces.
Yeah, it was, and those were also reviewed. Your open space board that you've appointed have seen all of those numbers. We don't just pull them out of a hat, honestly. There's a lot of thought and a lot of data and things go into it. So, in any case, you've got the right to appeal. We encourage people to do that, and I understand. Listen, mine went up, okay? Now, when did I find out it went up? When Nikki and them posted the numbers when they went up. I looked and said, yep, my assessed values went up on that. So we absolutely will bend over backwards. Call our office, not the Board of Equalization. You can call them for appeal. We'll also help you get the information for that, give you the appeal packets, whatever you need there. But we really encourage people to do that.
So I'm anticipating this all goes through Jennifer, correct, Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, sir. So
What do we got for help for this, for the Board of Equalization for appeals? Because I imagine she's going to be overwhelmed.
well, they've got to July 3rd to make the petition to appeal, and I've been talking to her on this tool we have called Cisco Jabber, and she asked the public to contact her via email is probably the best way. And J. Medelez at franklincountywA.gov is her email address. I'll spell it out for the public. It's JMEDELEZ at franklincountywA.gov. So she's handling all that, and certainly been a robust group that wants to petition. So, but
we
can handle it.
absolutely will help where we can. There's limits of what we are allowed to do when it interacts with the Board of Equalization because they do hold basically our values. They look at those. We've walked people over. We've had people email us with the packets for appeal. We've forwarded them to Jennifer. I mean, we'll do everything that we legally are allowed to do within the office to assist people that direction on that. I can tell you that this is, our county is not unique in this year by any means. This is happening. I just met with 39 total assessors and Department of Revenue, and this is going on throughout major parts of the state, many, many counties.
So maybe the people will wake up then and change Olympia.
And I am all for the legislators. In fact, we had legislators at our meeting, and I spent one-on-one time with some of them and discussing some of these very facts. Again, the Homestead Act that could give huge reductions for our Franklin County citizens, and it would be a shift to the west side for a big portion of it, which in some ways is about time on that. So please call our office.
So another thing about the model, there were some questions about, are we over-assessing? And so when you're looking at a median or an average of 100% of value, which is where we're required to be, so the IAAO, the International Association of Assessing Offices, has a myriad of statistics that we have to test each model by. Does it comply with looking at it this way and that way and from every angle statistically? And if it's not in compliance with any of those statistics, then the model's rerun until it is. And so with those questions being asked, looking at it every which way, still, someone in my position, an appraiser who's responsible for doing a very large, difficult, thankless job, I'd be remiss if I wasn't questioning every single value that I set. So when questions like this are brought up, why is the riverfront land so high? Well, I'm looking at the sales. I'm looking at the sales that took place, but I'm also looking at sales that took place since the first of the year. Were we that far off? People are saying fraud. I'm going to question everything that I did. I'm my biggest skeptic. So when I look at sales that have taken place since the first of the year, so we track market value, we track every arm's length transaction that comes through, we vet every sale. Sales that took place between January 1st and April 30th, because those are the only sales that we've validated so far, we're at 101% of market value, which means we're right at 100% of market value. Are some going to be over and some going to be under? Yes, that is the nature of statistics. If your median and your average are at 100%, that means some are over and some are under. So do some values need to be questioned? Absolutely. That is what we want to do right now. That is what these 30 days are for. Are you being overassessed? Let's fix it. So it was mentioned that the public has questions. We put on a workshop here in 2021 when John was new. We sat here. It was for the public. It was for the commissioners, but it was a workshop. And we would love to do it again. If that was an official invitation, I will completely take you up on it. I would love to put some information up on the board so everyone can see it. We try to educate the public one at a time when they call, but it's much more time efficient with our resources that we have in our staff. If we can put on workshops and actually put the numbers out there for people in a transparent way, would love to do that. It may not be during the 30 days because, again, we're trying to get back to you. We're trying to provide the information that's being requested. But shortly after that, we have a chance to take a breath and put the data together for a workshop. We would love to do that. We do that annually if you want to.
I think we need to look at a bigger venue for that, too.
Yeah, are you guys proposing doing something as Commissioner Peck suggested or now? So, because obviously there's been a lot of questions, because I can help facilitate
the
that.
time frame between now and July 3rd, I do not want to overpromise and underdeliver on something. So I will tell you this, file your appeal if you need to, do that. We certainly will bring something before the commissioners based upon what you're allowed on the agenda and the time frame that you allocate for us. We'll bring it back before it. We've got a lot of stuff we can put on the screen, very impressive stuff. Commissioner Peck, the one you mentioned even on yours and some of the local property right around there, I have a sheet on my desk right now. Be glad to go over some stuff with you on it. So it has been mentioned. Franklin County is unique. You know, in 2009, when the market was just going to pieces all over, you know, the only county, I believe March or May of 2009, the only county in the entire western United States that had a year-over-year increase in property values, guess who it was? In the entire western United States, Franklin County. The only county in the entire western United States.
Was Benton County right behind him?
No, they were not. They weren't. And even right now, they're not. If you take a look, because it's been said that we're declining, I'll tell you, year over year, month, January over to January of last year, we're still up 4.6% in Franklin County, not so Benton County. February, we're up 4.6%, Franklin County, not so Benton County. March, we're up 3.6% from a year ago in March. That March was up 18.3% from the previous year. And in April, 1.9. Gee, we're starting to slow a little bit, but we have not stopped in Franklin County.
According to...
Well, yeah, the stats are put out by the Federal Reserve from CoreLogic. CoreLogic is well known, even fee appraisers use the data there. We use it. It's true data. So Franklin County is unique. Again, the assessed values going up does not determine that your taxes are going up. That's based upon the budgets. If everybody's assessed value went up 20%, and you raise your budget by 1%, the county's increase to these taxpayers cannot be more than 1%. Now, you're only one of the taxing districts, but that's the way it is. So, and right now, the county only gets between 10 and 12% of that big pot. That's all you have to operate this entire county on. I can understand where you're talking about taking things maybe to the voters.
One more time, that phone number.
509-545-3506.
Thank you, John.
That's our office, not the Board of Equalization's office, where there's only one person to answer the calls. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other department heads or electeds? Department heads or electeds?
The Civil Service Commission is a department appointed by the state, so I'd ask you to recognize that.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
While coming back and assuming my duties, I was made aware of an incorrect and illegal promotional exam done by the Sheriff's Department. We are reacting by retesting. We are calling for all those tests, their scores for the written and oral, and I'm calling in extra help for our HR department to re-execute those. Further, the Civil Service Commission has no counsel because we have a shortage. Our first counsel has left. Our second counsel has a relative that works within the Law Enforcement Corrections Department. And then the last counsel we were given is the counsel for the sheriff himself. There have been many emails exchanged back and forth, trying to fix, not getting any cooperation, and that is statutorily appointed to every officer and employee of the Franklin County building, is to help cooperate and support Civil Service Commission. Furthermore, my brand-new Civil Service Chief Examiner Secretary has somehow been solicited for another department without the alert to civil service, which brings back the conflict that we found in interviewing with another employee. Now, somebody has been conducting civil service with Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez is not civil service. That is appointed by the Civil Service Commission by statutory law. It is time to recognize and cooperate and assist civil service in their statutory duties. I can't certify this list by law. So I'm coming in here to clean up the mess, and I'm coming in here and I'm asking for help immediately with everyone. And I'm calling help from outside. I have also called 3 sources for an outside counsel for me. And I'm told that there's no money for outside counsel. You don't have enough people in the prosecutor's office, so there should be money that should be allotted to defend the Civil Service Commission fairly. So, if you want to have a hearing and have me removed and put further burden on the prosecutor's office, this is now half man, as far as I understand, 12 people, now they're down to 6, I think, or close to that. Furthermore, we're not getting the statutorily required communication from the sheriff's office. We had a captain position that was sitting there. We had no information, and yes, he is in the exempt group. I do not want our officers or anybody compromised further. There has been also a compromise by one of the employees over there breaching the Open Meetings Act by drawing in one of my other commissioners into an improper communication. You have been advised. I will be meeting with you and HR and the prosecutor's office.
Thank you. Is there any other department heads or elected officials?
Sean Sant, Franklin County Prosecutor. If I could address a couple things. First, I guess I'll start with the last issue that was addressed. Civil service has historically been served with a member from the HR department. Mike Gonzalez, as the county executive, is overseeing HR department. So I don't see there being a problem with if there was a lack of a full civil service, and I've heard in the past the request from civil service to request help from HR, it would make sense that Mr. Gonzalez would be involved in that process of trying to provide help and support for that. So I don't know necessarily what it is. My office is trying to assist and provide counsel. What I have indicated to both the sheriff and to the Civil Service Board is I'm not going to be spending county taxpayer dollars on getting everybody their own separate counsel just simply because they're requesting it. There has to be a basis to feel that there's a conflict. We are certainly trying to give guidance to both. That does not in itself provide a conflict any differently than it is that our office gives advice to the various departments throughout the county. That's what we do. We have to do our job and we have to provide legal guidance. Sometimes there are occasions where we have disputes that arise, especially if there's a suit, as we know from the past, where there's a suit filed against one of our county departments or elected officials, then we are obligated to provide a defense and represent them. We are not obligated to represent or initiate legal action on behalf of any department or on behalf of the board. That is something that solely
rest with the Office of Prosecuting Attorney to decide whether or not we have to take that. So we do have to provide a defense. We feel that we can provide adequate counsel to both parties. We feel we've tried to, we've spent actually a lot of resources doing that. Daniel Stover, my chief civil deputy, is assigned to helping that out. And so anyway, we are trying to do our best with the limited resources. Now, speaking of that, that is something that has arisen. People are taking opportunities elsewhere, from what I've heard, better pay opportunities, and I think we provide some great conditions within my office. It's a public service, so we take pride in the work that we do, but at some point, people are going to be looking for other opportunities. So I did reach out to Mike. I got back from military service on Friday, catching up on work and emails, reached out to Mike, appreciate him taking my call and discussing briefly the issues that we're facing with prosecutors leaving the office, and obviously we're going to need to expedite a review or compensation to be able to bring in line. And I recognize that we've talked about the issue of compensation size before. We don't use Benton County as a comparable county from a legal sense of the term, but we certainly look at a market comparable analysis as where are our people leaving, where are they going to, what is the pay that's being offered. Obviously, we can look at various counties similar to our size, similar to our market, but when we're talking about market, we really do have to focus on where would people be leaving. If they don't have to sell their home as an attorney, they're going to be looking for opportunities either at the Hanford site, jobs there. They're going to be looking at adjacent counties where they could continue to reside in their home and not sell. Although it sounds like maybe selling your home now is a pretty good time to do it because the appraisals are up. So I know from my personal appraisal, it's also gone up. But and that's kind of the other thing I wanted to talk about too. I did want to echo what John had stated, is that as we're talking about appeals, that's an important part of the process. Secure the timing of filing the appeal, because what that does is it buys you time. Just like an appeal for a legal case does not mean that you have to have your entire legal argument ready to go within 30 days. It's a process that it secures your right, because if you wait to day 31, the board's going to say it's untimely. And there's, even for us, usually if you don't make deadlines to file the notice of appeal, that usually precludes you from filing an appeal later. So that's a preservation of right, as John's office said. I just want to echo that, because what that will do is it will also alleviate the stress on his office of trying to get all these answers done between now and July 3rd. So just to give his office some credit and benefit, they will review that, because again, just by filing the appeal does not mean that you necessarily have to go to the Board of Equalization. It simply means you may, if you are able to have a discussion and they pull up their data and they review it, if they find that there's an error, they might be able to correct it. And guess what? The nice thing is, if you filed your appeal, you could withdraw that appeal, and that happens, I think, on a regular basis. And so work with his office. Don't believe that you're going to get the answer necessarily by July 3, but if you have a legitimate issue, please file that to preserve your rights, and that'll give the taxpayer as well as the property owner and John's office an opportunity to go through those issues and resolve. Speaking of appeal, got contacted as well. A few people asking about the lawsuit that was filed. It does name Franklin County. It does name individually the commissioners by name in their official capacity. This was on the redistricting lawsuit. Again, I just want to reassure everybody that this did not affect Franklin County. Franklin County did not appeal this decision. Franklin County worked with a negotiated settlement that started back in September of 2021 and ultimately resolved in May of 2022. And our payment of attorney fees and everything was limited to what had occurred during that time. So I just want people to be aware that this was not an action that Franklin County is going to have to pay any attorney fees. We evaluated the law at the time this was filed. We've evaluated the
development of the Washington State Voter Rights Act since its inception. We recognized that there were some issues. We made a settlement offer, and we were able to resolve that litigation. We tried to minimize the best we could the payment of attorney fees at the time, so our fees were limited back to May of '22 when this was settled. So this was taken on by an additional party, and I know Commissioner Ditter, you're probably well aware of this because you were named in there, as they did not assess any additional attorney fees against you, so specifically named in this 44-page opinion. So anyway, Franklin County did not incur any additional costs, neither did you in that. They didn't assess that, and I think the opinion speaks for itself. But anyway, no cost to Franklin County folks, because I know people had contacted me asking me about that. I just wanted that to be clear. The other thing I wanted to address, per the request of the board, we've sent off, or we're sending off, we were making sure that we captured all the requested questions of the board regarding the VEBA payments. Part of the issue in gathering that additional information and research was trying to frame the question appropriately for the Attorney General's office so that they would be able to review it. And I just want to clarify a couple things. One, when I was out for military on June 6th, there was a meeting where I believe, Mr. Gonzalez, you had said in the open meeting that I basically agreed that these were wages. And I think there's an important distinction between the conversation that I had with you and Margot. The distinction was that it was taxed similar to wages, but not as wages. And I think that's an important point of distinction. When I was listening, trying to catch up with the June 6th meeting, I heard you say that I agreed with the opinion that this was actually as wages, and I disagree with that. I think that's the issue that's being framed for the Attorney General's office to review, because one of the things that we discussed is that we found other statutes that I don't think the auditor's office addressed either, and that's RCW 4104-190. And that title, just the title of that RCW as we reviewed, specifically says hospitalization and medical aid for county, municipal, and other political subdivision employees or elected officials, and it states cost is not additional compensation. So that raises the real question for all the commissioners, but also the fact that we had to gather information such as the pay stubs and how does this wage get evaluated? Is it truly a wage? Is it a salary? And one of the things that I think we've looked at is that the auditor's office has not quantified the additional payments as cash that are subject to taxation, has not qualified them on the 1% of the filing fee. So when you file for elected office, the filing fee is based on 1% of the salary for that particular position. That 1% was not increased to include the conversion of insurance benefits to the taxable cash benefit. And just to be clear, this isn't something that was just done with the board. This was done with all the elected officials because other groups within Franklin County have also opted for this benefit package to be able to split the compensation of receiving additional taxable cash benefits in lieu of VEBA deposits. And I think that's an important distinction because one of the things this offers, especially at a time when I'm losing prosecutors, people are looking for a total compensation package when they look to work or employment. When they see that their spouse who might have benefits elsewhere, or maybe that person has military insurance already, if they realize that, hey, coming to Franklin County, maybe our pay or our compensation on the salary side isn't the same that you might get in other counties. But when you look at total compensation, and it's close because of the flexibility that we've put in place that allows our collective bargaining groups to opt for this. Again, they have to choose to do so as an employee group. They can't do it individually. They can't do it just as a small portion. It has to be a decision made as a group. And so when they do that, it gives that group additional flexibility. And so other county departments are doing this.
And again, these are questions that we're posing to the AG's office because there's some AG opinions already that have been addressed on this. So we're trying to compile all that information together so that we get a good response from the Attorney General's office and they could get back to us on this, as well as the State Auditor's office. I believe I reached out to make sure that they're reviewing it, and because the State Auditor's office is a client of the AG's office, they're already going to be reviewing it as part of that process where they will give guidance and input. So anyway, I just wanted to make a clarification that as a group, the commissioners are not their own group. They were part of the group with the other elected officials, and the other elected officials at the time had to vote as a group to be able to allow for this option to either get it as a additional deferred compensation or as additional taxable cash benefit. So again, the ultimate question will be if the AG's office looks at it and says, hey, is that compensation, is that salary, as our state constitution does restrict on the increase of salary. Also asking them to look at it, because I think it's been framed looking at it both as a VEBA benefit. If the commissioners were to increase the amount of compensation for benefits at any time during their term of office, that was a question I think that was raised, is does that constitute an unconstitutional increase in salary? So whether you get the increase into your VEBA account, into your deferred compensation, or as a taxable addition, a taxable cash fringe benefit, that triggers also another question of, wait a minute, to keep up with ongoing cost, if as an employee, and commissioners are an employee in this regard, we are obligated as a county to provide insurance to all of our employees, or an option of benefit for all employees. And there's various exceptions that are designated through federal codes and state codes that would allow people to have qualifying plans that bring those to the table. Then they could have options of having money put into a HRA VEBA account, or receive it as a taxable fringe benefit, as other groups within our county have done. So I want there to be an open discussion for that, because I know usually open enrollment is the time where we make changes. And I know also prior to when I left for military duty, there was a decision to basically change the current practice for benefits. And I think the auditor's office, Mr. Anderson, came up here earlier and kind of discussed or touched around it, of trying to reframe the resolution that was passed by the board. But I would ask that if the board is making a decision to change something now with current individuals, if you basically hold off on that until the open enrollment period, because one of the concerns I have is that if an employee is cut their benefit that they designated during the open enrollment period, and now if they are told they have to now get on the county insurance, they're not going to be eligible to take the county insurance during a mid-cycle, because of the open enrollment period is limited unless there's a circumstance, a life-changing event that would trigger an allowance to be added to county insurance. So I would simply ask the board to hold off on taking action further until that discussion comes up at open enrollment period, but also gives the opportunity for the Attorney General's office to review. I think everybody's situation is frozen in time because of the process of elections. This is back from an action that took place back in 2016. And I believe Commissioner Didier, there's a question of whether or not you or Commissioner Mullen would even owe the money as well, because even though it was designated as an excess of what the current insurance was, the problem is that the increase was provided to all employees. So I would hold off on repaying that until we get a decision back from the AG's office to determine whether or not you and Commissioner Mullen even fall into that. And further, I think it's important that if we're going to make changes, that we do so in a coordinated effort with the HR department as they coordinate with our open enrollment folks that are able to bring in the expertise for these benefits, because as we're talking about trying to retain and recruit employees, we do have to look at our total benefits package, and those benefits are something that other employees will look at very highly. If they can't get close in salary, they're going to look at what does that total compensation do for them by coming to our county. And I just want us to keep that flexibility in mind, because we do have other groups within the the county that have opted for a taxable cash split between the VEBA contribution and what they would receive as a taxable split. That is something that is going to have to be bargained with our collective bargaining units, primarily the Teamsters, the courthouse employees. We want to make sure that we have a coordinated effort and discussion of moving forward and making sure that we don't change something drastically, because that is something that's going to have to be negotiated with all those collective bargaining units. And we want to make sure that we're being mindful of those, the timing of changes of benefits. We want to be mindful of making sure we're not doing anything that's going to cause further flight from our employment. And we want to make sure that obviously Franklin County is a competitive place as much as possible to work based on total compensation. So anyway, I think I've taken up enough time, but there's a lot of issues going on over the last couple weeks. We are down, going to be down by mid-July, but basically 50%. We're going to continue to do the job we have, but obviously we're only human and we do have limits. And so there's probably going to be timing delays for getting certain responses in. Our primary goal is to ensure public safety, making sure that we are prosecuting those individuals that law enforcement brings in custody, making sure that those individuals are our priority and continue to be our priority, as well as continuing to prosecute the other 18 pending homicides, related homicides, including vehicular homicide cases, and continuing to do the job that the people want us to do. So thank you very much.
Is there any other department heads?
The process for civil service is that there's an announcement given from the sheriff's office to civil service. That was not done, okay? Then we accumulate a list of any that are still on a list that has not expired for any position, and we create a new class, and we open it up, and then the civil service department does the exam. That is by statute, by statute. The HR department, when they informed me of this, told me they weren't aware of it. So yes, we have a county administrator, but he is not both civil service and HR. So there's a lot of issues to be concerned about here. And I'm trying to do my very best to help make it a legitimate test done by civil service. Read your statutes, please.
Any other department heads?
Hang in there,
Electeds.
Hang in there, gentlemen.
I think
First of all,
I think we've heard from everybody in the courthouse today.
not yet. So just really quickly, I know that it was the auditor's office that raised the questions regarding the unconstitutional pay.
Yes.
And I just want to keep looping back, because I appreciate everything that's going on. I hope it progresses. We will get to the bottom of it. And I'm glad that's happening. The things that were most important is to understand that every elected in this courthouse swears an oath to the U.S. Constitution, the state constitution, and the laws of the state of Washington. And we all have to read and understand those laws in order to conduct our jobs and do it on behalf of the people. And in the end, when you have a dispute, and that's what this is all about, is the interpretation of what's going on, we have to go to and find credible sources that everybody can agree on. This particular thing, we haven't looped back, and I know nobody's actually gone back to, that it's the legal staff at MRSC that discuss these things, and I hope that whatever resolution comes out of all of this addresses the big key issues that started the whole thing, because it'd be very easy to distract. I mean, there's a lot of money at stake, and the county is, my hope, if you look on there, one of the things that came out of that was, I hope we pass an ordinance on how to do this stuff in the future so that when we're long gone, people don't have to recover this ground. But the bottom line was, in this whole thing, it had to do with the benefit being converted to a stipend. This is from MRSC. And then it had to do with the timing of it, and then the interim. And then that was why, I took a pretty deep dive before this is very distracting, a lot of time spent on it, a lot of hard feelings. You have even the PAs, down a lot of people, so there's a lot of important things going on in this county. The key issues were the timing of passing it and then it's the conversion of it. And that's, I'm not here to debate that. That's what's up for debate for them to try to figure out. But the fact that it is or could be a fringe benefit or how that's all handled, like I said, I went with what what the lawyers at MRSC were the ones saying, hey, this is the best policy. And that was why one of Eikenberry's AGOs that were in there, and there was 2 of them I included in that packet, said, yeah, they spoke to these things that are at a very high level. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I don't have any of that. But I still, like I've always said, these laws, to raise these questions are important. And then we have to look at what actually happened. So I do appreciate that it sounds like we're going to at least make the attempt to send it, to the Attorney General, because it's a lot of money and it's an unusual circumstance. And I think, I actually believe everybody here wants to get it right and that it all occurred, a while ago, but it's still going on. And that's just, from the people in our department. And then I would say, I think a lot of people are familiar with over the weekend, there's been a dispute internally regarding a travel reimbursement. I would just say, without going into it, you can go to the auditor's Facebook page, and there is a response there that if people want to find out the other side of it, and the more information, I would encourage people to go there and look at that. So that was all I had.
Thank you. Is there any other department heads or elected officials? Seeing none, we'll move down to public comment. Anybody for public comment? Anybody on the phone?
Let me just check real quick. No, sir.
Well, I wish Miss Nikki and Mr. John hadn't left, because I want to reiterate again, on the appeals package, first paragraph, you may ask the appraiser to review sales prices of similar properties. You may ask the appraiser to visit your property in person. If an error has been made, the appraiser may change the value. Well, I did that. And the answer I got was, so go to the Board of Equalization. That's all I got to say.
And that's where we go. Public comment.
But it says they take care of it.
I got a couple things. First thing is on the assessments again. I think that, and I was upset that John left because I had a question for him. I think he misspoke. He said just because your assessment goes up, your taxes don't go up. That's not true. They do go up. Bonds and levies are passed for a certain amount. Your assessment goes up, the assess per thousand on that goes down. But as the county's money that you guys get, when your assessment goes up, your taxes go up, because yours stays set, unless you pass a higher tax rate or something else. It stays set. So when your assessment goes up, your taxes do go up. Yep. So I wish John was here to listen to this, because he misspoke in 2 meetings now, 2 weeks ago and today, because he said the exact same thing both times, and that is wrong. Now, I think when you're representing the public, you need to tell them the truth. Bonds and levies do not change. When those are passed, that's the amount. Plain and simple. So when your assessment goes up, the amount per thousand goes down. But as far as the county goes, your assessment goes up, your taxes goes up on that. Plain and simple. Now, let's get the facts straight to the public so they can make their assessment on how they feel about it all. Okay? That's number one. Number two, back to this insurance deal. Okay? If you remember, I came down here 6, 7 years ago when this whole thing started, mad as heck about it because I didn't feel it was right. To this day, I don't feel it's right. Now, if I remember right, we were the first county in the state to do this. Very first one. To be able to take it as compensation, salary, whatever you want to call it, benefit, whatever. Very first. Now we've set a precedence. Now the rest of the counties are following suit. Okay? Now, there may be some legal term to get around it all and do it, I guess. I can't help that unless we change that, number one. My next question is, I got a question for commissioners, that when this thing started, it was only elected officials that could do this, take it. If you didn't take your medical benefit as non-elected, you had to put it in a VBA account. Is that correct? So anybody and everybody can take it as salary? Or whatever you want to call it? How does it work?
The chair has determined that these are not two-way discussions. I'll be happy to meet with you after the meeting and explain it.
Yeah, it's public comment right now. Just,
Okay, yeah, I just don't think it's right. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, you take benefits from taxpayers, whether it be from military or someplace else, and then you also if you're not paying enough, then just put it right in the guy's deal. If you don't want to take your insurance, then here's what your salary will be versus here will be if you take the benefits.
thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment?
Kathy Sant, Franklin County. I just wanted to find out, since Matt Beaton brought up the official Facebook page for the auditor, and the county has one, and also I believe the sheriff has one. I have friends and acquaintances. I'm not on social media personally at all. I don't like it, but I have friends and acquaintances who say that they have had comments removed from those official social media pages, and I just didn't know that. I thought that went against the law if you have an official social media account for whether it's your county or like the Matt Beaton or the sheriff. You're not allowed to remove or bar comments from those. So I just didn't know if the county had any kind of social media policy in place or if those things are being looked at. I'm just concerned if people's comments get removed, if people are not happy with the comments that have been made on official pages. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
Hi, Chris Hollingsworth. Just want to reiterate what Mr. Sant said and also Mr. Rosenau. It's hard to discount free legal advice. File your appeal. There's only so much they can do making a phone call. File your appeal. It'll get you in the system. You have till, again, July 3rd. Everyone said it. Say it again, July 3rd. Good example of filing your appeal. 2 years ago, I filed the appeal on my property. They determined that the land table was incorrectly made. I asked if they were going to change everybody impacted. They said no, only those that filed the appeal. So file the appeal. If they do find an error in their model, at least it gives you an opportunity to have your case heard and get something changed. Switching gears a little bit, my offer still stands to help educate. Mr. Peck, Commissioner Peck, you mentioned about the discrepancy between the two. A simple land extraction method would suffice. You use Marshall and Swift cost estimates. You figure out what the improvements are. You have, if your neighbor sold a house, they know what it sold for. They know the market value. They do the cost estimate to know what the improvements are. You deduct the depreciation. What's left is your land. Pretty simple process if you know how to do it. With your income producing property, there's three approaches to value: sales, market, or sales is market, cost, and income. With income producing property, it would seem logical to use income in determining those values. That might be an option for you, Commissioner Didier. Again, file your appeal. If you don't have the ability, you can go to Zillow. Zillow has some sales in your area. You can contact a realtor. They'll help you find some sales in your area. You can contact an appraiser. Yes, there generally will be a fee. But get some sales, file your appeal. Try to go down to the assessor's office. I wouldn't call them. They're busy. They're like John was saying, that they have the new construction they're working on and they're on a timetable. Give them a break on that. Just file the appeal, get your information, and go from there. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Nobody on the phone?
No, sir.
I skipped over administration office business. Mr. Administrator.
Yes, sir. I do want to address a couple things. Civil service and Michelle Andrews. Thanks for your service. I've always felt like we've had a good relationship. She certainly wants the best. But I do want to let the public know I am not running the Civil Service Board. I attended one meeting on April 11th and really have taken a hands-off approach to that until we got it out of HR's hands. And Daniel Stovern in the PA's office has been very accessible from what I understand to you. So I just want to put that on the record. And Daniel said that he's met with you a couple of times. And it appears that there's some debate on whether those certified lists are getting out fast enough to the sheriff's office and whether those are stale or not. So and we're working through that. So, but I want to let the public know that the PA's office has been very accessible to Michelle, and we're trying our best. The sheriff is essentially running a recruiting office. I mean, what he's told me, commissioners, it's basically survival. And I think the biggest issue going statewide is there's so many variables about how jurisdictions are doing this. Civil service, the model itself is a bit antiquated. So a lot of times, and it's not just affecting our jurisdiction, it's affecting a lot of jurisdictions across the state. By the time names get to sheriffs, a lot of people are already taking jobs. So why this is happening, I think, again, it's up to the west side to really take a look at this and closely evaluate. But we certainly, I want to let the public know we've been accessible to Michelle. My door has always been open to her. And hopefully we'll get some answers. In terms of Sean, I'll just agree to disagree of what was said in the meeting. I respect Sean. I think the larger issue is let's get that issue to the AG's office on the VIBA debate. I'm going to work with Sean to try to solve the issues that are happening in his department. So I feel like, that's the priority I want in his office, to work with him closely and hopefully solve the crisis that we've got going on in the PA office and OPD. So that's all I want to just kind of set the record straight on a few things.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a follow-up for the county administrator.
Go ahead, Commissioner Peck.
Mr. Gonzalez, would you please clarify the comment you made a minute ago? I want to be sure, without any question in my mind, that I understood what you just said regarding the prosecutor's conversation with HR in the meeting that you were in.
So what's the question?
You just made a statement that you have a difference of opinion with the prosecuting attorney as to what was said in the HR meeting, and I'd like you to elucidate, fill that in a little bit more for me.
Contextually, well...
No, factually, because it sounded like you said he has one version of what was said in the meeting and you have a different one. Is that correct?
No, well, I'll tell you, it was in regards to, so the conversation was in regards to the pay. I mean, you had said in a meeting.
Now, I'm asking about your conversation with the prosecutor that
Okay,
you just referred
yeah, I'm
to.
going to start it out with, you had said on a May 30th meeting that you're the lowest paid elected official in Franklin County, and I'm that way, and I'm quoting here because I froze my wages for years to ensure this type of nonsense didn't take place.
Would you please speak to the question?
Commissioner Peck,
I'm getting
would
to the
you
question.
please let him finish? Quit interrupting
Mr.
him.
Chairman, point of order.
Point of order.
I've asked you a very specific question.
No, you're asking me
Said
for
it
a
was
point of order.
wages.
You addressed me with the point of order, Commissioner Peck, not Mr. Gonzalez. You made a point of order. What's your point of order?
The point of order is that a sitting commissioner asked the county administrator to answer a specific question, and he's filibustering and going through a litany of history.
I'm not
The
filibustering.
question-
I'm
Mr.
setting the
Gonzalez,
stage.
he's making a point of order. Let me hear his point of order, and I'll rule on it.
The question was, did I understand what you said about the conversation in the HR office with the prosecutor and you, that the prosecutor's opinion of what the prosecutor said is different than your opinion of what you said? That has nothing to do with the history of pay scales.
It has everything to do with the history of pay scales. That's what we were talking about, Commissioner. Can I remind you? You said, check your facts. My statement is true. I'm the lowest paid elected official in Franklin County. I'd like you to come back and verify that all for us. End quote.
And
So that's what we were doing in that meeting.
And so, go ahead, and I'll be looking for the answer to the question.
The answer was when I asked him if it was a salary and a wage, because I said, that makes him the highest paid wage earner in the county. And he said, yes.
Well, good. Thank you for putting that on the record.
That's what he said. I know what he said.
Okay. Do we have an executive session today at all?
No, sir.
So with that, is there any other business for the good of the county? This meeting is adjourned.